Hey everybody, what's up? Just Aaron here. Question Period Canada. We've got an interesting speech for you to watch. It's Pierre Poilievre speaking to Canadians from Vancouver. This is taking place during the 3-day summit, 3-day retreat the Liberal cabinet is on, where they're patting themselves on the back and talking about the amazing job they're doing of destroying our economy, it would seem like. Anyhow, Poilievre is pretty interesting in this speech, and he covers some questions by some reporters. Let's take a quick look. There'll be no French. We've cut that out just because the answers are the same in English and in French. So we'll cover the English. Let's take a look at Pierre Poilievre. He's pretty funny in this speech.
The terrible existential crisis to the entire universe, which of course is pizza ovens. I know that Prime Minister Trudeau and his federal agency have launched an outright crusade against pizza ovens. They started in Montreal, but we know that they will get out here to Vancouver. So Vancouverites who are locked in their homes and terrified of pizza ovens should be at ease that Justin Trudeau will come to your rescue. Don't worry about your 100% rent increase or the fact that you can't feed yourself. Justin Trudeau is spending your money going after pizza ovens here and everywhere, and he will not stop until this crisis is resolved. But he's in a retreat today in more than one way. Yes, there's the expensive retreat of Liberal ministers who are coming together to pat themselves on the back and spend your money on luxury for themselves. No, it's not just that he's back from vacation, having spent $86,000 of other people's money on himself. He's in retreat in another way. He's retreating on everything he has done over the last 8 years, right? After 8 years of Trudeau, life costs more, work doesn't pay, housing costs have doubled, crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder are common in our streets, and he divides to distract from all that he has broken. Justin Trudeau is not worth the cost. And now he wants you to know he's a changed man. He's not the same Justin Trudeau of the last 8 years. He's going to be completely different. He's in retreat. After 2 years of me warning about the inflation crisis, his deficits and money printing were causing, he admits that things cost too much. After me warning that his massive carbon tax would drive millions of people to food banks, he now gives a pause and retreats on that as well. After my warnings that him giving money, billions of dollars, to incompetent local bureaucracies and mayors to block housing construction, that we would have a crisis, he admits that the crisis is real and claims that he's changed his approach and mind on that as well. After my warnings that if you let out repeat violent and property criminals again and again on early bail and parole and have weak borders, that we would lose cars to theft, he now admits that that is a problem too, and he's going to hold a big summit to talk about it. And after he spent 8 years ruining our immigration system, a system that was the best in the world, the system that brought my brilliant and beautiful wife here, he now admits that he screwed that up too, and he is retreating on that by cutting back by over 150,000 the number of international students. This is a problem of his own making. His own incompetent minister, Sean Fraser, was the one that allowed the program to grow, in the words of another Liberal minister, out of control. So you have 16 people crammed into basements in Brampton. You have housing costs rising faster than at any time in Canadian history and anywhere else in the world. You have what the Liberals now admit were fake and phony colleges for which Liberals were the ones that issued the study permits. Now they tell you they've changed their mind, and Justin Trudeau is a new man. He admits now that he was wrong on inflation, housing, immigration, and crime. He wants you to forget the last 8 years and elect him as a brand new man. We don't need the Prime Minister to change. We need to change the Prime Minister. We need a common sense Conservative Prime Minister who will axe the tax to bring home lower prices, cap spending, and cut waste to balance the budget, bringing down inflation and interest rates, lower income taxes so people bring home more powerful paychecks and hard work pays off, that we link federal infrastructure dollars for each city to the number of homes they allow to get built, so that we reward those who get out of the way and let builders build, and penalize those that block new construction. We need to sell off 6,000 federal buildings and thousands of acres of federal land to build, build, build. We want those homes to be in safe neighborhoods, so we need jail and not bail, jail and not bail, jail and not bail for repeat violent offenders and other criminals who have terrorized our streets. We need treatment, not decriminalize crack and heroin, to bring order and safety to our communities, and we need a Prime Minister that puts the people ahead of the government. That is the common sense of the common people, united for our common home. Now, let's bring it home.
Thanks so much. We'll now take a few questions from the floor.
Hello. My first question might not be the easiest for a politician to answer, but this is Rebel News, and I'm Drea Humphrey. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
In 2021, the COALTIION First Nation Band government said that they found the remains of 215 children who were former students of the former Kamloops Indian Residential School. The reality is that to date, not a single body has been discovered. The band government itself has revised the wording of their claim to say that it's 200 probable graves, no mention of specific children anymore. And the only way to know what's actually beneath the soil would be to excavate, which the band government has not done in 2.5 years to date. Meanwhile, in Canada, 96 churches have been burnt or vandalized across the country since that initial claim was made. Many of the fires are proven arsons, and the vandals often leave messages that tie to the initial 215 kids claim buried in unmarked graves. My question is, why, just like the leftist media, the NDP, the Liberal government, are the Conservatives also so quiet about this truth and good news, which is that to date 215 children's remains have not been discovered there, when that truth coming from political leaders could potentially help set free Christian Canadians from attacks on their places of worship?
Thank you for your question. I would disentangle two parts, because there is no justification for burning down a church, period. Regardless of the other information or regardless of the other justifications that people would claim to use, there is never a justification to burn down a church. And we as Conservatives have called for stronger criminal sanctions for arson against all who carry out these attacks. We've also called for more security infrastructure around places of worship so that we can stop terrorists who burn down churches, who attack mosques and synagogues. Unfortunately, these crimes against religious communities have raged out of control after 8 years of Justin Trudeau's catch and release system. After he has divided our country and turned people and groups against each other, we have more violence directed against religious groups, including Christians, than we have ever seen in Canadian history. This is the result of Justin Trudeau. He is not worth the cost, he is not worth the crime, and he is not worth the country that we know and love. And we should provide the resources to allow for full investigation into the potential remains at residential schools. Canadians deserve to know the truth, and Conservatives will always stand in favor of historical accuracy. None of this changes the fact that the residential schools were an appalling abuse of power by the state and by the church at the time. And we need to move forward in a country that is free so that every single Canadian, whether their ancestry goes back tens of thousands of years or whether they have been here for 10 days, has the freedom to live their life and in prosperity and happiness. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, Georgie Smythe, CBC News. Do you believe it's the right move for the federal government to cap the number of international students arriving in Canada for the next 2 years? And would you do the same? I'm looking for an answer in English and French, please.
Yes, we. The question is, how did we get into this mess? We didn't, you know, most Canadians didn't even know there was an international student program 8 years ago because it was so peaceful. They might have seen students happily walking off to class who were from another country, but we didn't think it was a problem because it wasn't. It worked. We had the most successful immigration system in the history of the world here in Canada. There are nations around the world that come to study how we got it so right for so long. And then along came Justin Trudeau, and through his total incompetence and irresponsibility, through his endless and nauseating virtue signaling, has destroyed that common sense consensus on immigration. Immigrants, international students, and temporary foreign workers are not to blame for his incompetence. He is to blame. He is the one that caused this mess. He is the one that brought hundreds of thousands of people here without homes, to cram 16 or 17 into a one-bedroom or basement apartment. He is the one that granted the the study permits. That is a federal responsibility. He and Sean Fraser granted the study permits for tens of thousands of students to come and go to fake colleges that the Liberal government now admits were, quote, puppy mills. He did that. So let's not blame the students. Let's not blame other levels of government. Let's blame the one man who is responsible for this disaster, and that is our incompetent Prime Minister. Can you think of anything he hasn't screwed up? Like, seriously, it has been, we never had 2 million people at a food bank. Sure, we always had people who struggled. 2 million people at a food bank? We never had a 100% increase in housing costs in 8 years. We never had middle-class carpenters living in parking lots. We never had 30 homeless encampments in Halifax all at once. And we never had the division and the chaos in our immigration system before Justin Trudeau, which proves once again he is not worth the cost. He is not worth the country we know and love.
Hello. A month and a half ago or so, it was revealed that the BC office here at CSIS was a toxic workplace for women especially. It's resulted in lawsuits and a workplace culture assessment. And I'm wondering what the reaction you had when those allegations came out publicly. And I'm wondering what a Conservative government would do to improve the working conditions at places like CSIS, at places like the RCMP and the military that have been rocked by these scandals in the years past.
It starts at the top. Justin Trudeau has created a toxic environment right across this country. Remember, it was Justin Trudeau that elbowed a woman in the breast on the floor of the House of Commons, that tried to grab a fellow MP by the arm and drag him down the aisle because he wasn't happy at the pace of a vote happening. It was Justin Trudeau that fired the first Indigenous Attorney General, a proud woman. Why? Because she exposed that he was trying to get her to drop charges on a corrupt Liberal-linked multinational corporation that had robbed over $1 million from the poorest people in Africa. And what did he do? I know, and it starts at the top. And I know, look, CBC never wants Justin Trudeau, the big boss, to be held accountable for his conduct. Same thing. Your Canadian press, your biggest client is CBC, right? You're not sure. I think you're sure. I think you are sure. And I think you know that Justin Trudeau is the head of the government, and CSIS is part of the government. So I know every time CP writes a story about the latest screw-up in our country, they forget to mention who's the Prime Minister, right? So here's the reality. Justin Trudeau is the head of the government. CSIS is part of the government. If there's a toxic culture in CSIS, it's because the head of the government has caused that toxic culture. And he's done it by setting the example, by mistreating women in his cabinet, in the parliament, in the public service, by dividing one group of Canadians against another, and turning the people against each other within the government and within our society. And that's why after 8 years of Trudeau, there's a toxic workplace at CSIS. There's toxic divisions right across our country. What we need is a common sense government that will hold abusers accountable for how they mistreat fellow employees, and bring in a professional workplace, which we always had in Canada's public service before Justin Trudeau. By the way, I find it incredible that CSIS officials have been leaking about foreign interference in our politics, probably because Justin Trudeau has tried to manipulate the intelligence and cover it up. And that could be contributing to the toxic workplace environment that exists at CSIS and the similar stories we've seen at the RCMP and across the government after 8 years of Justin Trudeau.
Thank
you.
Thank you. We're just going to move on to this question, the next question here.
Hi, CBC again. Melanie Joly said this morning her statement is her statement and wouldn't elaborate further on whether what's happening in Gaza is a genocide. How adequate is that in terms of clarifying Canada's position? English and French as well, please.
Which position?
She did not elaborate further. That's all I can give you, I'm afraid.
Well, I have to figure out which position I'm to comment on, because Justin Trudeau has many different positions on the question that you raised. What he's done is very cynical. He's divided the country again. So he gets a block of MPs to go out to mosques and say that Israel has committed a genocide. And then he gets another group of Liberal MPs to go to synagogues and say that it's totally outrageous to suggest that Israel has committed a genocide. And he sits in the middle of the two and gives incomprehensible statements. You would need a linguist with a PhD and a magnifying glass to figure out the garble that comes out of the foreign minister and the prime minister on this question, because they're deliberately giving answers that no one can comprehend. He's divided the country on this just like every other issue. The reality is there is a genocide being carried out by Hamas. I don't have to accuse Hamas of committing genocide. They admit it. They proudly brag about it. It's in their charter. They have announced that as soon as the conflict ends, if they're still in power, they will relaunch another October 7th style attack with the purpose of eliminating all Jews from the Middle East, and they frankly would love to eliminate Jews from the rest of the world. This is a genocidal, homicidal, sadistic death cult. And everything I have just said are things that Hamas admits to. So it's time for the Prime Minister to grow a backbone, stop trying to divide Canadians based on religion and ethnicity, and take a principled stand in favor of humanity and against the real propagators of genocide, who are the Hamas terrorists.
This will be the final question.
Thank you.
Drea Humphrey again with Rebel News. In the past several times, you have denounced the World Economic Forum, and you've made it clear to pledge that if your party forms government, you will ban your cabinet ministers from being involved with the World Economic Forum. Yet, I'm also aware of many Canadians who applaud you for saying that, but also have reservations on whether or not the claim is authentic because they see images of your name being on the World Economic Forum site, and also because you worked closely with former MP John Baird, who at one point was a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader in a campaign. So my question for clarification purposes, for those concerned about foreign globalist organizations potentially encroaching on our nation's sovereignty, does your pledge to ban cabinet ministers from being associated with or involved with the WEF expand to those you hire as staff as well as advisors?
Yes. No staff, no ministers, no MPs in my caucus will be involved whatsoever in that organization. It is a group of high-flying, high-tax, high-carbon hypocrites who all got on their private jets to fly off to a remote ski village where they talked about how working-class people should not be allowed to heat their homes or drive their pickup trucks. I'm not going to work for a group of globalist billionaires who serve their own interests at the expense of everyone else. And I'd like to specifically point out Mark Carney. Here he was, celebrating the central banks who caused the inflation by printing trillions of dollars so that people like multimillionaires like him could have their asset values inflated, while the purchasing power of working class people and seniors was wasted away by inflation. A massive wealth transfer from the have-nots to the have-yachts. A common-sense conservative government will bring home control of our democracy to this country, and it's not just on that issue. We will ban the IRGC to end the interference of the 700 agents that are operating in this country on behalf of the terrorist regime in Tehran, and that's according to Global News. We We'll shut down foreign-controlled police stations. We will bring in a foreign influence registry. We will bring home control of our democracy, and we'll make this a country that works for its people, the common people, and the common sense of the common people, united for our common home. Thank you.
So what did you think of Poilievre's speech? I've lived in Canada my whole life. I know this, that we really only have the Liberals and the Conservatives to choose from as like the federal government. So is it going to be Poilievre or is it going to be Trudeau? Do I think Poilievre's perfect? Hell no. He's a politician, but he's better than Trudeau. He seems so much more honest and relatable, like a real person. Trudeau is not relatable, and he's a pretty fake guy. My name's Aaron. This is Question Period Canada. Thanks for watching the video. Like and subscribe. We've got lots of things we're trying to make and making. That's it. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next video. Have a good night. Try to stay warm. Have something healthy to eat.